The night I joked, "Stay with me tonight," I expected Tessa Monroe to roll her eyes, insult my timing, and tell me she'd rather sleep in the building's laundry room. Instead, she said yes. Too fast. So fast that the joke died in my mouth before I even realized it had been a joke. My name is Grant Ellis. I'm 34, and until that night, Tessa was mostly known in my life as the woman from apartment 4B who argued with me like it was a scheduled sport. We met 6 months earlier because of trash bins. Not romantic. Not poetic. Trash bins. I had left one too close to the side entrance after a late work night, and she caught me the next morning in the hallway with coffee in one hand and judgment in both eyes. "Are you the reason the entire stairwell smells like hot garbage?" she asked. I looked at the bin, then at her. "Good morning to you, too." It was, until I opened my door. That was Tessa. Sharp. Direct. Unimpressed by almost everything. She was 29, worked as a court interpreter, and had the kind of composure that made you feel like she could dismantle your argument in 3 languages before breakfast. Dark hair, serious eyes, quick mouth, always carrying a tote bag full of folders, and one of those metal water bottles that looked like it had survived combat. After the trash bin incident, we developed a rhythm. She complained about my parking. I complained about her habit of leaving delivery boxes in the lobby. She said my dog, Milo, looked like a divorced accountant trapped in a golden retriever's body. I told her her houseplants in the hallway looked like they were staging a union protest. We were not friends. At least, that was the official story. The unofficial story was that I had started looking forward to the arguments. That was embarrassing, so I never examined it too closely. Tessa made every ordinary day less dull. If I came home exhausted from the architectural firm where I spent 10 hours correcting other people's expensive mistakes, and she was in the hallway unlocking her door, I knew I was about to be insulted with precision. "Long day?" she'd ask. "Is that concern?" "No. Your face just looks like a spreadsheet gave up." And somehow, that helped. I told myself it was because she was funny. That was true. It just wasn't the whole truth. The night everything changed started with rain. Heavy rain. The kind that turns gutters into waterfalls and makes old apartment buildings reveal every secret they've been hiding behind paint. I was in my kitchen making a sandwich at 9:30 when someone pounded on my door. Not knocked. Pounded. Milo barked like we were being invaded by a hostile nation. I opened the door and found Tessa standing there in leggings, a soaked gray hoodie, wet hair stuck to her cheek, and the angriest expression I had ever seen on a person holding a mop. "My ceiling is leaking," she said. "That sounds like something you'd blame me for." "I am considering it." "Fair." She stepped aside, and I saw the water trailing from her doorway into the hall. That killed the joke. I grabbed my toolbox, called the emergency maintenance number, got no answer, then followed her into 4B. Her apartment was usually controlled chaos. Stacks of legal documents on the desk. Books in 2 languages. Plants everywhere. A small framed print crooked above the couch that she insisted was intentionally asymmetrical, which was a lie. Now there was water dripping from the ceiling near the bedroom door. Not a flood yet, but close enough. We moved fast. Buckets under the leak. Towels on the floor. Plastic over the documents. I found the access panel in the hallway ceiling and shut off the line feeding the unit above hers while she called the landlord and delivered one of the most elegant threats I'd ever heard in English. Then Spanish. Then English again. By the time the immediate crisis was contained, her bedroom carpet was soaked, half her closet was wet, and her bed had taken enough water that sleeping there was out of the question. Tessa stood in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself, staring at the damage. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked small. Not weak. Just suddenly without armor. I didn't like it. "I can help move anything dry to the living room," I said. She nodded once. "Okay." No argument. That bothered me more than the leak. For the next hour, we worked quietly. Too quietly. I moved boxes. She sorted clothes. Milo sat in the hallway watching us like an anxious supervisor. At one point, Tessa picked up a framed photo from her nightstand before the water reached it. A woman in hospital scrubs stood beside her, both of them smiling at some beach somewhere. Her face changed when she saw it. I noticed. She noticed me noticing. "My sister," she said before I could ask. "She died last year." The room went still. "I'm sorry," I said. She nodded, but her eyes stayed on the frame. "I don't usually say it like that. I usually say, 'I lost her,' because it sounds less brutal." I didn't answer. There wasn't a better sentence available. Then she put the frame carefully into a dry box and said, almost too calmly, "This apartment was supposed to be the place where I started over." That was the first honest thing she'd ever said to me without wrapping it in a blade, and I had no idea what to do with it. Maintenance finally called back near midnight and said someone would come in the morning. The landlord offered a hotel reimbursement, but every nearby room was either booked or too far to make sense in the storm. Tessa stood in my doorway afterward, holding a duffel bag and looking furious again, but this time I could tell the anger was mostly there to keep everything else from spilling out. "I can sleep on my couch," she said. "Your living room smells like wet drywall. I've slept in worse places. That is not a recommendation." She glared at me. "Do you have a point, Ellis?" I was tired. She was soaked. The hallway was a mess, so I said it without thinking. "Stay with me tonight." Her eyes snapped to mine. I realized how it sounded, and immediately lifted one hand. "I meant the couch, or the guest room, or whatever option makes you least likely to report me to building management." I expected the eye roll, the insult, the familiar escape into sarcasm. Instead, Tessa said, "Yes." No pause. No joke. No defense. Just yes. Too fast. Then she looked away like the speed of her answer had betrayed her. And that was the moment I understood the leak was not the real disaster of the night. Because Tessa Monroe, the woman who argued with me over trash bins, parking spots, houseplants, and hallway etiquette, had just accepted a place to stay like she had been waiting for me to offer one. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. Tessa stood in the hallway with a duffel bag in one hand, wet hair drying badly around her face, and the expression of a woman who had just realized her own mouth had betrayed classified information. I kept my voice careful. "Okay." She looked at me sharply. "Don't say it like that." "Like what?" "Like I just agreed to join a cult. I offered you dry walls and a couch. You said stay with me tonight." I clarified immediately. "You did," she said. Terribly. That was better. The sarcasm came back like a pilot light catching. I stepped aside. "Come in before the hallway gets emotionally worse." Milo greeted her like she was returning from war, which, given the condition of her apartment, was not entirely inaccurate. Tessa scratched his head, and for a second her face softened in a way that made me look away too quickly. My apartment was not impressive. 2 bedrooms, one used as a half-office, half-storage room. Bookshelves. I had built myself because buying decent shelves felt like surrender. A couch that Milo believed was communal property. Kitchen counters cleaner than my social life. Tessa stood just inside, taking it in. "You live like a man who alphabetizes his regrets," she said. "I knew you'd appreciate the system." I didn't say appreciate. No, but your tone had respect in it. My tone had concern. I grabbed towels from the linen closet and handed them to her. "Bathroom's at the end of the hall. Guest room is technically an office, but the daybed is comfortable if you have realistic standards." "I have extremely low standards tonight." "That helps." She paused before walking down the hall. "Grant," I looked at her, "thank you." No insult after it. No quick correction. Just the words. That made the whole apartment feel too quiet. "You're welcome," I said. While she changed, I moved a stack of drawings off the daybed, found clean sheets, and tried very hard not to think about how strange it was to prepare a room for Tessa Monroe, the woman who once left a note on my door that said, "Your dog has better hallway manners than you." The woman who had just said yes like the word had been waiting under her tongue for months. When she came back out, she was wearing dry sweatpants and an oversized black shirt, her hair damp and loose around her shoulders. She looked younger like that, or maybe just less defended. I pointed toward the guest room. Bed's ready. She glanced inside. You folded the blanket. I do understand the broad concept of hosting. You folded it like a hotel. I've been alone too long. My domestic habits are becoming threatening. That got a small smile. Then she looked toward my kitchen. Do you have tea? Do I look like a man who has tea? You look like a man who has one emergency tea bag from a gift basket. That was annoyingly accurate. 3 minutes later, she was sitting at my kitchen table, holding a mug of expired chamomile while I made coffee, because I had apparently chosen violence against sleep. For a while, we talked about the leak, the landlord, the insurance, the fact that maintenance had once fixed the lobby door with what appeared to be hope and one screw. Safe topics. Then Tessa grew quiet. I waited. She traced one finger around the rim of the mug. Today was my sister's birthday. That explained the photo, the speed of the yes, the way her anger had looked like something wearing armor. She would have been 31, Tessa said. She hated birthdays, not in a cool way, in an annoying, dramatic way. Every year she'd say she didn't want anything, then get offended if nobody planned something. I smiled faintly. Consistent. Deeply. Her mouth moved, but it wasn't quite a smile. I was already trying not to fall apart before my ceiling started leaking. I leaned back, letting that sit. She looked up at me. This is where most people say she'd want you to be happy. I hate that sentence. That made her blink. She might, I said. But people use it like grief is a dog you can command. Tessa stared at me for a second. Then she whispered, exactly. One word. But it changed the room. She looked down again. I argue with you because it's easier. Then what? Being normal. I didn't answer. She gave a tired little laugh. You're supposed to disagree. I thought about it. Didn't feel credible. That got another smile. Small, but real. Then she said, after Isabel died, everyone got gentle. Too gentle. People talked to me like I was glass. My mother cried every time I mentioned her name. My coworkers lowered their voices. Men on dates either got scared or tried to become inspirational. Her eyes met mine. You argued with me about recycling bins. I was very passionate about municipal order. You were obnoxious. Also true. But you didn't look at me like I was a tragedy. Her voice got quieter. So, yes, I started arguing with you on purpose. I felt something in my chest shift. Not dramatically. Just enough to understand that half our hallway fights had been something else wearing ridiculous clothes. Trash bins is emotional strategy, I said. It worked. Did it? She looked at me. I'm here, aren't I? That answer hit harder than it should have. I got up and put my mug in the sink, mostly because I needed something to do with my hands. Behind me, Tessa said, I said yes too fast. I turned around. She looked embarrassed now. Truly embarrassed. Not sharp. Not angry. Just exposed. I heard it after I said it, she continued, like I'd been waiting for someone to offer me a place where I didn't have to be fine for one night. That's not something to be embarrassed about. It is when the person is the man you've spent 6 months insulting in hallways. Honestly, that part adds texture. She laughed once, then covered her face with one hand. I walked back to the table but didn't sit too close. Tessa, you can stay here tonight because your apartment flooded. You can stay because it's your sister's birthday. You can stay because you're exhausted. You don't need to make it make sense beyond that. Her hand lowered. And if part of the reason is you, she asked. There it was. The room seemed to hold its breath. I chose every word carefully. Then we don't rush it while you're soaked, grieving, and homeless for the night. Her eyes softened. That is a very responsible answer. I'm trying not to resent it. She smiled, but her eyes were wet now. Me too. Later, I walked her to the guest room. Milo followed, then immediately jumped onto the foot of the daybed, like he had been assigned emotional support duty by a higher court. Tessa looked at him. Am I allowed to keep the accountant dog? For tonight. She sat on the edge of the bed and rubbed Milo's ears. I stayed in the doorway. You need anything? She shook her head. Then, just before I could leave, she said, "Grant?" "Yeah?" Her fingers stilled in Milo's fur. "If I wake up and forget where I am," the sentence broke there, not dramatically. Honestly, I understood. "I'll leave the hall light on," I said, "and my door open." She nodded once, looking down. I started to step away. Then she said, so softly I almost missed it, "I didn't want the guest room because it was dry. I wanted it because it was yours." I turned back. Tessa looked terrified that she'd said it. And, for once, neither of us had an argument ready. I did not step into the room. That was the hardest thing I did that night. Tessa sat on the edge of the daybed with Milo's head in her lap, the hall light falling softly across the floor, and the words she had just said sitting between us like something alive. "I wanted it because it was yours." I could have made that moment about me, about what I felt hearing it, about the fact that for 6 months I had been pretending our arguments were just arguments because the alternative made my chest feel too exposed. But Tessa was tired, grieving, displaced, and still half-soaked from a disaster that had ruined the one place she had tried to rebuild herself. So I stayed in the doorway. "Then I'm glad it's mine," I said quietly. Her eyes lifted. That answer seemed to undo her more than a dramatic one would have. She nodded once, like she was trying to accept kindness without arguing with it. "Good night, Grant." "Good night, Tessa." I left the hall light on, and my door open. I slept badly. Not because anything happened, because nothing did, and somehow nothing had become loud. Every creak in the apartment made me think she was awake. Every time Milo shifted, I wondered if she needed something. Around 3, I heard the guest room door open softly. I sat up. Tessa stood in the hall, one hand on the wall, eyes unfocused for half a second. Then she saw me, saw the open door, saw the light, remembered. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded, embarrassed. "Bathroom. Left." "I know. She looked down. For a second, I forgot. I didn't say anything clever. For once, clever felt useless. She went to the bathroom, came back, and paused again outside my door. "I'm okay," she whispered. "I know." But I didn't close my door after she went back to bed. In the morning, the storm had passed, and my apartment smelled like coffee, wet dog, and pancakes I had made too confidently. Tessa came out of the guest room, wearing the same oversized shirt, hair a mess, face bare, Milo following her like he had chosen new management. She stopped at the kitchen entrance. "Are you cooking?" "Technically." "Should I call someone?" "I already did. They said breakfast crimes are civil matters." Her mouth twitched. Good. That tiny, almost smile felt like the first dry patch after the flood. She sat at the island and watched me flip a pancake badly. "You always this domestic after emotional emergencies?" "I'm expanding my services." "Do you invoice grief separately?" "Premium rate." She laughed. "Not much." "Enough." Then her phone buzzed. Her face changed before she even picked it up. I turned the heat down. "Landlord?" She checked. "Maintenance? They're saying my bedroom ceiling needs to be opened. Drywall, insulation, probably flooring. Minimum, 1 week. Maybe 2. She stared at the message like she could make it less true by disliking it hard enough. I set the spatula down. "You can stay here." Her head snapped up. "No, I have a guest room. You have a daybed and an emotionally possessive dog. He comes with the room, Grant." "Tessa." "No," she stood too fast. "I'm not moving into your apartment because I had one bad night and said too much. You didn't say too much." Her eyes sharpened. "Don't be kind in that tone." "What tone?" "The one that makes it harder to be unreasonable." I leaned back against the counter. "Then be unreasonable. I'll wait." That stopped her. For a second, she looked angry. Then her face folded into something more honest. "I don't want to owe you a place to fall apart," she said. "You wouldn't. I would feel like I did." "Then don't stay because you owe me." I kept my voice steady. "Stay because your apartment is unsafe, because hotels are expensive, because Milo already filed adoption paperwork, and because pretending you don't need help is a very inefficient way to suffer." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she sat back down slowly. You're much less annoying when you're right. I'll try to avoid making it a habit. She ate half a pancake in silence. Then she said, My mother is doing dinner tonight. For your sister's birthday? Tessa nodded. I wasn't going to go. Why not? Because my mother will cry. My aunt will say Isabel is watching over us. Someone will bring grocery store cake like that solves death. Her voice went flat. And I will have to be the stable one because everyone thinks I'm the stable one. I didn't answer quickly. She looked at me. What? I was deciding whether to say the helpful thing or the true thing. True. You don't have to be stable tonight. Her eyes went bright so fast she looked down. I know that in theory. In practice? In practice, people get scared when I'm not. The kitchen went quiet. Then I said, I wouldn't. She looked up. There it was again. The thing neither of us could turn back into hallway banter anymore. Tessa set her fork down carefully. Don't say that unless you mean it. I mean it. She held my gaze for 1 second too long. Then her phone buzzed again. This time, she let out a tired laugh. My mother, asking if I'm bringing anyone. I looked at her. Are you? She didn't answer. Not right away. Then she looked at Milo asleep under my table, the pancakes on the plate, the guest room down the hall, and finally back at me. Would you come with me? I went still. Tessa swallowed once. Not as my neighbor, she said. Not as emergency maintenance. Not as the man with the dry couch. Her voice dropped. As you. There was the line. Not a joke. Not an argument. Not a leak or a storm or a practical reason pretending to be enough. Just Tessa, asking me to walk into the hardest room of her year beside her, and this time, I knew better than to make her wait. Yes, I said. Tessa blinked like she hadn't expected the answer to arrive without negotiation. Yes? Yes, I repeated. I'll come with you. She looked down at the counter, then back at me. You don't even know what you're walking into. No, I said, but I know you asked. That quieted her. The dinner was at her mother's house across town, a small brick place with a porch swing, too many flower pots, and warm yellow windows that made it look safer from the outside than it probably felt inside. Tessa sat in the passenger seat the whole drive with both hands wrapped around a paper bag from the bakery. She liked lemon cake, she said suddenly. Isabel? Tessa nodded. The ugly kind from grocery stores. Bright yellow frosting. Too sweet. She said good cake was overrated because bad cake had personality. That sounds like a defensible position. She would have liked you. That landed harder than I expected. I didn't make a joke. Neither did she. When we got there, her mother opened the door before we knocked. She was smaller than I expected, with Tessa's eyes and a tired softness around her mouth. She hugged Tessa first, tight and careful, then looked at me with polite confusion. This is Grant, Tessa said. There was a pause after my name. Not long. Long enough. Her mother's eyes moved between us. Oh, Tessa's jaw tightened. He's my neighbor. Then, after half a breath, she added, and my friend. That word should not have felt as important as it did. Inside, the house smelled like roast chicken, coffee, and something sweet cooling on the counter. Her aunt was there. 2 cousins. An older man I realized was her stepfather. Everyone greeted Tessa gently, like they were afraid sudden volume might crack her. She hated it. I could see it in the way she smiled too quickly. The way she answered questions before they fully formed. The way she kept touching the edge of the bakery bag like it was an anchor. Dinner was not terrible. That almost made it worse. People told stories about Isabel. Safe ones at first. Funny ones. How she once got lost 3 blocks from her own apartment because she refused to admit the map app was right. How she had cried during a dog food commercial. How she bought gifts months early and then spoiled them because she couldn't keep secrets. Tessa laughed at the right places. But each laugh cost her something. Halfway through dessert, her aunt said, she'd be so proud of how strong you've been. There it was. The sentence. The one everyone meant kindly, and nobody understood. Tessa went still. Her fork rested beside the slice of lemon cake. Her eyes dropped to the plate. Her mother's face tightened, like she already knew. I did not speak. This was not my room to correct. Tessa inhaled once. Then she looked up and said, "I'm not strong." The table went silent. Her aunt blinked. "Honey, I only meant I know what you meant." Tessa's voice shook, but she didn't stop. "But I'm tired of being called strong every time I don't make people uncomfortable." No one moved. "I miss her," she said. "I miss her so much I get angry at ceiling leaks and trash bins and people breathing too loudly in hallways. I wake up and forget for 3 seconds, and then I remember, and it feels like losing her again before breakfast." Her eyes were wet now. "I'm not strong. I'm just still here." Her mother covered her mouth with one hand. Tessa looked terrified, like the truth had left her body and she could not call it back. Then I felt her hand find mine under the table. Not dramatically, not for display, just there. I closed my finger. For once, nobody tried to turn the moment into comfort too quickly. Her mother stood, walked around the table, and wrapped her arms around Tessa from behind. "I'm still here too," she whispered. That was when Tessa finally cried. Not loudly, not theatrically, just enough for the whole house to stop pretending grief could be handled by speaking softly around it. I stayed seated, holding her hand until she loosened her grip. After dinner, her mother asked me to help carry dishes into the kitchen. I expected questions. I got one. "She trusts you?" she asked, rinsing a plate. I looked back toward the dining room, where Tessa was sitting with her cousins, face tired but lighter somehow. "I think she's trying to." Her mother nodded slowly. "That's not small for her." "I know. She argues when she's scared. I noticed." That made her smile faintly. "Then you're either patient or doomed." "Could be both." She looked at me for a long second. "Don't make her feel foolish for needing someone." That was the whole warning. No threat. No interrogation. Just a mother who had already lost one daughter and was terrified of watching the other become unreachable. "I won't," I said. And I meant it. On the drive home, Tessa was quiet. Different quiet than before. Not empty. Exhausted. When we pulled into our building's lot, she didn't get out right away. "Thank you," she said, "for coming, for not saving me from the room." She looked at me. "For just being there while I said it." "That felt like your fight." "It was." Her mouth softened. "But I wanted you near it." I looked at her, and for the first time, there was no leak, no storm, no family dinner, no practical excuse standing between us, just the truth finally sitting still. "Tessa," I said, "when your apartment is fixed, you don't have to move back into being alone just because the emergency is over." Her eyes searched mine. "Is that a housing offer?" "No." "What is it?" I took a breath. The honest thing I should have said before the ceiling collapsed. She went very still. Then, before I could finish, she whispered, "Then say it before I argue." So I said it. Not perfectly. Not like a man in a movie with rain on the windshield and the right music behind him. Just honestly. "Tessa, I don't want you here because your ceiling collapsed," I said. "I want you here because my apartment feels more like a place when you're in it. I want the arguments. I want the bad hallway timing. I want Milo betraying me for you. I want the version of you that makes jokes when she's scared and the version that can't joke at all." I looked at her. "And if that's too much tonight, I can wait. But I'm done pretending I only offered you a guest room." Tessa stared at me. For once, no comeback arrived. Her eyes filled slowly, but she didn't look away. "You really should have said that before the ceiling collapsed," she whispered. "I'm learning under pressure. That's not an apology." "No." Her mouth curved, barely. Then she reached across the space between us and touched my hand. "I don't know how to do this without being difficult," she said. "I would be disappointed if you tried. I will argue when I'm scared. I know. I will probably try to leave before I have to admit I want to stay. I'll leave the hall light on." That broke something open in her face. Not sadness this time. Relief. She leaned toward me across the console, slowly enough that either of us could have stopped it. Neither of us did. The kiss was quiet. careful. Not a solution to grief. Not a reward for a hard night. Just the first honest answer after months of pretending every argument had been about trash bins and hallway plants. When she pulled back, she laughed once, shaky and soft. "What?" I asked. I'm trying very hard not to say something sarcastic. "That sounds painful." "It is." "Take your time." She looked at me then, really looked, and whispered, "I wanted you to ask me to stay long before tonight." That was the sentence I carried upstairs. Not the kiss. That sentence. Her apartment took 11 days to repair. She stayed in my guest room for all 11. At first, we were careful in the way two adults are careful when they know a fragile thing deserves more than hunger. She slept in the guest room. I slept in mine. Milo rotated loyalties nightly and showed no shame. We had coffee in the morning. Dinner. When work allowed, she insulted my spice cabinet. I told her her legal folders looked like they were plotting against society, but the house changed. No, that's not right. I changed in it. I started listening for her keys. Started buying the tea she liked. Started leaving the porch light on, even when I knew she was already inside. On the 12th day, maintenance cleared her apartment. She stood in my hallway with a laundry basket in her arms and looked toward 4B like it was both home and a test. "You don't have to decide today," I said. "I know." She looked at the guest room, then at me, then at Milo, who had positioned himself on top of her duffel bag like a legal objection. "I'm going to sleep in my apartment tonight," she said. My stomach dropped before I could make it behave. Then she added, "And tomorrow, I'm coming over for breakfast. Your pancakes need supervision." I breathed again. "Permanent arrangement? Probationary. Fair." That was how we began. Not by moving too fast. By not disappearing after the emergency ended. 3 months later, Tessa gave me a key to her apartment. She acted casual about it. Everyone told louder stories. Tessa cried once in the kitchen, and this time, nobody treated it like a failure. I stood beside her while she wiped her face with a dish towel. She looked at me and said, "I'm still here." I touched her hand and said, "I know." 2 years later, we stopped pretending the building had 2 separate homes for us. She moved into my apartment officially, though she argued the word "officially" was bureaucratic and unattractive. Her plants took over my hallway. Her books colonized my shelves. Her water bottle appeared in every room like evidence. Milo, naturally, adjusted fastest. 3 years after the leak, I proposed in the hallway between our old apartments, right where we had started. No restaurant, no crowd, no perfect speech. Just me, one knee down on the same floor where she had once stood, soaked, furious, grieving, and too tired to pretend she didn't need anyone. Tessa stared at the ring, then at me. Then she said, "You are proposing in a hallway." "Yes. The same hallway where you caused the trash bin incident. Allegedly." Her eyes filled. Then she laughed and cried at the same time, which felt exactly like her. "Yes," she said, "before I argue. We got married the following spring in her mother's backyard. There was lemon cake. It was ugly. It was perfect." And years later, whenever people asked how we got together, Tessa usually said, "My ceiling collapsed." I'd say, "That's not the romantic version," and she'd answer, "It's the honest one." She was right. Because the truth was, I didn't fall in love with Tessa when she finally stopped arguing. I fell in love because she trusted me enough to argue, grieve, stay, leave, come back, and still believe I would be there with the hall light on. What would you have done if the girl who always argued with you suddenly said yes too fast when you joked, "Stay with me tonight"? And have you ever realized that someone's sharpest side was really the place they were hiding their fear? Tell me your story in the comments. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.